Let's face it, building an amusement park from the ground up proves something very obvious. It's nearly impossible. In today's video, I'm going to go into the reasons why and help answer this question. I'll be diving into many of the different challenges you'd run into when considering building your very own amusement park. So hopefully you're not feeling too optimistic, because now this video is here to take away those hopes of yours. This video will have a lot of moving parts to it, since building an amusement park also has probably way more moving parts than even you're aware of. Obviously, I'm going to be breaking this video up into smaller sections to make it more digestible, but there is still no real easy way to talk about this. As you'll soon find out, building an amusement park is effectively tantamount to building a small town. This video is going to get into the nitty-gritty details, which means there is a chance I may get some of it wrong. This is all about navigating the logistics of large-scale construction projects, which generally are not a one-man job. You have people in all fields of expertise working together to make this happen, with the person in charge of it all doing the huge task of delegating. In order to really emphasize the points I'm bringing to the table, I will also take a couple of moments to talk about people or groups of people who experience success or failure in the pursuit of constructing a brand new amusement park. As I wrote this script, I came to the realization that this feels like it could really be a boring subject to talk about, but I found myself fascinated at the scale that these amusement parks operate at. It all seems like a logistical nightmare, but they somehow manage to chug along despite that fact. It all comes down to people and how big of a role they play in the successful operation of an amusement park. Hopefully you find this to be just as interesting as I do. Without further ado, let's dive right in. In order to start an amusement park, you need to have a business. You first have to establish the company and then secure things like trademarks and figure out what you even want to name your company. This section will probably be the most boring because it covers the legal stuff. However, you're extremely eager to start building an amusement park, so you really should pay attention to this whole thing.
And that's a fact.
To start, let's focus on the most foundational part of this whole amusement park business: getting your EIN or tax ID. These are completely non-negotiable in starting a business, and if you've personally already started one, this is a complete no-brainer. During this process, you'll want to choose what type of business you want to establish. Do you want it to be privately owned and have complete control over all the decisions made around your business? Or do you want it to be public and allow other people to put their money into your project to help make it happen, albeit with some trade-offs? This entirely depends on what your situation is. If you're planning on starting this on your own, it's a sole proprietorship. If you want to own it with at least one other person, it's a partnership. And if you want it to be a legal entity that provides limited liability to your partners, then it's an LLC.
Wait, what?
Right, limited liability. What the heck does that mean? Well, I'm glad you asked. Basically, if you own a business and there are multiple shareholders of your company, they all have a bit of their own money in the company. If your company goes under and you owe a ton of debt but can't pay it, the debt is on you, not the shareholders. They are only responsible for their piece of the pie. Who are shareholders? Well, these are people with money who like the idea of your company, so they put their own money into a company to help make it run. In exchange for their money, they get a say in how the company is run, based on how much money they put in.
Hello, I like money.
In reality, they see financial growth opportunities with your company, so you want to make the company do everything possible to make their money grow. Finally, there's corporations. Corporations are a lot like LLCs in that the shareholders don't have to be held liable for more than their part of the deal, but there is no real individual owner of the company. All the shareholders quote-unquote own the company and have their portion of ownership based on how many shares of the company they own. Once you've got your business type and hopefully your business name, you need to focus on trademarks. It would really suck if you had this killer name for your amusement park, like Michael's Magic Land, and it turns out that some mega conglomerate already holds a trademark for that name and are willing to smite you down with the hand of God if you so much as dare touch that name that they aren't even using. Depending on how creative you are, coming up with a name and securing a trademark can be fairly easy, but you always run the risk of making somebody angry because your amusement park name sounds slightly too similar to their South Dakota-based gift shop selling crappy trinkets and cheap gags.
Foolish earth creature.
You also have to submit trademarks for your roller coaster names and other ride names. There's really just a long list of things that you really have to consider when it comes to your trademarks. Okay, you've set up your business and you got your trademarks. Now you're ready to go. No, wait, I lied.
I lied.
Now we have to figure out some more very important things if we want to do this right. We need to choose where we're going to build this park, and in doing so, figure out if it would be a good fit in the area. We can do this with market research. This includes looking at what areas seem ripe for building an amusement park and who lives in the areas you're considering as well. The easiest distinction for finding your target audience is deciding on what kind of park you're planning on making. Do you want it to be more heavily themed, or focus less on theming and host some of the biggest, baddest coasters out there? Or do you want to pick the third option and go with something partially in between, a la Universal Studios? This last option would probably be the most expensive route, as you're paying extremely large amounts of money for the theming of a ride as well as the attraction itself. Let's say you decide to go for the lesser themed, high thrill style amusement park. Great, now you know that your target audience is going to be mostly teenagers and young adults.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
Once you've figured out who your target audience is, you need to find an area where there's lots of teens and young adults around who might visit your park. Fortunately, you can look at a local area's census data to find the average population and other demographic info like average age of a certain population and more. Okay, so you've looked around and figured out that Albuquerque, New Mexico is a prime area with roughly 20% of the immediate population being 18 years or younger, according to the 2024 American Community Survey. So you've got your spot picked. Now, the next thing to focus on is the already existing local attractions. You certainly wouldn't want to start building a brand new amusement park right across the street from Cedar Point. You know that you'd be destined to fail from the beginning. Fortunately for us, you're planning on building the newest coaster capital of the US, and so your city of choice has very little competition. It has some, but it's a small park that doesn't really seem to pose a huge threat. Sadly for them, they'll probably have to struggle to try to keep up with you and might fold after a short battle, meaning that Albuquerque is yours to conquer.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Now let's take a detour to really understand some of the challenges that some hopeful park creators have run into. I want to specifically bring up the story of American Heartland, which was a project slated to open around 2028 and was supposed to be located in Veneta, Oklahoma. This $2 billion project was proposed by former Disney Imagineers and was supposed to be a 1,000-acre theme park and resort that would have had a water park, an RV park, and a 300-room hotel. The theme park portion was supposed to be 125 acres in size and consist of 6 themed lands. These lands would be Liberty Village, Great Plains, Bayou Bay, Big Timber Falls, Stony Point Harbor, and Electropolis. So what happened? It's somewhat difficult to really pinpoint the exact cause, as I believe it was a combination of several factors. First of all, the financial struggles. How exactly do you convince people to get on board with a project with a proposed budget of $2 billion? Sure, the designers of this potential theme park were former Disney Imagineers, But having that industry experience does not a successful theme park make. The construction plans themselves had tons of revisions as the planners discovered things such as the proposed land being located on floodplains. It also turns out from a lawsuit filed after the park truly failed to break ground that the leaders of the project were paying themselves generously from the investors' money, and that they allegedly lied about the involvement of Disney Imagineers entirely. Obviously, this is a comedy of errors, and a ton of people got excited for a project that didn't make it very far off the ground. I mean, who really thinks that building a large-scale theme park in Oklahoma, of all places, is that great of an idea? Look, I get it. Sure, bringing a large-scale attraction like this would bring a lot of jobs to a struggling area, and could bring tourism to the area as well, but that's a tough ask when the theme park is pretty much the only notable place in the area. Focusing on a place like Orlando, Florida, which is a theme park hotbed, you at least have all of the great things to do in Florida, such as enjoying beaches and many more tourist attractions. So why did this park fail? Put bluntly, mismanagement, poor financial decisions, and potentially some corruption and dishonesty sprinkled in. All of this being said, when choosing to build your very own amusement park, you need to really consider the reason why you want to do it and define your own measure of success. In many cases, this success is measured by money, but in others, it isn't. So yes, I joke about choosing to build an amusement park from the ground up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but that's just it, a simple joke that I will continue to use, if only for the fact that it's a funny name to say. So, you've chosen the general area for where you want your park to go, made sure that the local population might be excited to go to your park, and you've got your business ready. Now, you actually have to pick the exact plot of land where you want to build this thing. There are many different things to consider when choosing which plot of land you'll be building your park on. You'll have to contend with zoning laws, noise ordinances, construction limitations, and other very important factors. This is one of the biggest challenges you'll likely come across: zoning. You see, certain areas and cities are zoned or designated for specific purposes. Sure, you could go to the local city council and argue that the land you want to purchase is perfect for an amusement park and should be rezoned. Really, your best bet is finding land that is already designated as mixed use or for amusements. Let's face it, nobody really actually wants a new, loud amusement park to pop up right in their backyard. Sometimes farmland can be rezoned for amusement parks, but it still can be very dependent on the local city planners. You have to really hope that they actually want your shiny new amusement park in their city in the first place.
That's not gonna happen.
Okay, so magically, you've found that your land is zoned properly, and you're one step closer to building this amusement park. But, oh no. The local NIMBYs down the street don't like that people are going to be having fun in their vicinity. If you haven't heard of the term NIMBY, it stands for Not in My Backyard. These people are everyone's favorite types of neighbors. Hoping for a new apartment complex to pop up so housing becomes more available nearby? Not if these folks have anything to say about it.
Get off my lawn.
Parks like Busch Gardens Williamsburg are especially privileged with their neighbors, since the rich community nearby can't stand the idea of people having fun, meaning that any coaster of theirs that goes over the skyline has to be painted blue so it is less visible. Really. Some people might even levy noise complaints against you, even if there really is no good reason for them to. Man, people just suck. Alright, now it's time to do some land surveying. Hopefully, you didn't just purchase a new plot of land in a swamp. You obviously want your structures to be built on solid land so you don't have to spend insane amounts of money trying to keep everything from sinking into the ground.
Well, duh.
Oh, and if you're building in an earthquake-prone area, hopefully you're not building right on top of a fault line. You remember to check for that, right? If you plan on building a coaster on top of land which is more prone to things like liquefaction, then you most likely will have to build specialized supports to ensure that it won't sink over time. Building in an earthquake-prone area likely means that your roller coasters and buildings have to be built in such a way that they follow whatever the local state's building codes are, which keep them less prone to fail in the event of an earthquake. Speaking of earthquakes, construction limitations. Let's say you're built in an area that is earthquake-prone, or potentially in the path of a major airport. Or you're next to some rich community who hates fun. All of these factors can lead to you having to abide by certain restrictions when building rides. This mostly comes into play with roller coasters, but this factor could have a profound impact on what you can and can't build at your park. No matter what, everything has to be permitted. Hopefully, you don't want to build a strata coaster with that 200-foot height restriction in your area. Now, let's talk about park accessibility. And when I say park accessibility, I'm not specifically talking about making the park ADA compliant, which is definitely important. No, what I'm talking about is things like road access. If you want to attract somewhere in the realm of hundreds to thousands of people to your park daily, you need to make sure that the local road infrastructure is built to handle that kind of traffic. Otherwise, you might find yourself getting in the way of many essential services and traffic, leading to lots of problems. The other important thing to consider is where your park is as well. If it's too far from any major population center, who the heck is even going to be able to make it out to your park? It needs to be close enough to local population centers for people to be willing to go, and on a high enough capacity road to be able to support the inflow of traffic.
Capiche?
Fortunately for us, we have a relatively recent example of a new amusement park opening up, being constructed from the ground up that can help give some insight into what the construction was like. This section may be shorter than the others, since much of the information is a bit more difficult to find, but I'll be as thorough as I can. The idea is, depending on the scale of the amusement park you're thinking of building, you'll need to consider the construction phase and everything involved with it. This is where we start to get into huge number territory, so look out. Lost Island, which is a 90-acre amusement park that, upon opening, featured 3 roller coasters and 22 other rides. All in all, the stated cost for building all of this was around $100 million, which seems incredibly cheap to me considering how expensive it can be to build large-scale attractions such as Fury 325, which was in the realm of $30 million. Now, a big factor that could have played into this was the fact that most of the rides at Lost Island were not brand new, being purchased from other parks. Now, looking on the other end of the spectrum is Universal Studios' Epic Universe. This park cost a reported $7 billion to build.
You what?
Quite the difference. The currently built park spans around 110 to 135 acres of land and features much more heavily themed attractions, all of which being built custom from the ground up. Another important factor to bring up is the fact that the land cost was most likely very different as well. Land in Orlando, Florida is likely magnitudes more expensive than in Waterloo, Iowa. I don't think I really need to explain why. Going back to Lost Island, it's difficult to really say just how much building materials were involved in constructing this park. But one interesting fact worth knowing is that at least 1 million cubic yards of dirt had to be moved in order to support the construction of this park. At Universal Studios, there were approximately 2,640 cubic yards of concrete poured on that larger property. Sticking to the same park, roughly 550 tons of steel were used for some of the framing. However, it should be noted that this is likely only a small fraction of what the number actually is, considering all of the rides and everything else. One factor that seems to be difficult to find information on for either park was related to electricity and plumbing. which we'll talk about in much greater detail later. Trust me on that. Labor is yet another figure that is difficult to accurately pinpoint for these construction projects. While no number was actually given, I estimate that roughly anywhere from 5,000 to 40,000 workers were employed to build the entirety of Epic Universe. With this workforce, it took around 4 years to build and open the entire park, which is not including all of the planning and research done in its construction. It most likely isn't the most difficult thing to do, but when planning for an amusement park, you need to ensure that there is a workforce that you can secure for this scale of a project. This is a big thing. You have to choose the rides you want at your park. Your concentration of rides will likely be somewhere in the ballpark of a 1:5 or 1:10 ratio of roller coasters to flat rides. Do you want your park to be filled with nothing but huge roller coasters, maybe with a couple of smaller family style coasters here and there? Or do you want everything to be slightly smaller scale, like Dollywood, and make room for the whole family? This is a key decision to make early on, as catering too much to one crowd or another can potentially drive away the opposite. If you're trying to keep things balanced, that is. If you want your park to be a thrill seeker's paradise, go wild. The next thing to consider is also in relation to the types of roller coasters you build. What is their capacity? Are they pre-built designs from these manufacturers, or are they custom built based on specific models that these manufacturers already make? Are they launched or powered by lift hills? Or are you doing something even more different, like an elevator lift? Is it built of steel or wood? Or is it hybrid? How tall is it? How fast do you want it to go? Will it have inversions? Circling back to that 1:5 or 1:10 ratio, I grouped the rest into flat rides, but really this includes a few other things as well. Water rides like river rapids or log flumes, shows, and other attractions can be included in this part of the list alongside flat rides. Maybe your park has a quiet corner with a petting zoo. Maybe it has some experimental new flat ride that is visually stunning and sure to turn stomachs. Concerning water rides, make sure your guests have a way to dry off nearby to keep them happy, and to help keep them from spreading water to the other dry rides. Nobody likes sitting in a wet seat on a roller coaster. Hopefully by this point you're still entertained. As you can already see, building your very own amusement park is an incredibly challenging thing if you want to do it right. So in order to break up this onslaught of stress that I'm bringing you, let's take a small break. Let's go ahead and enjoy some peaceful art.
Break time's over. Chop chop.
Thinking about the infrastructure of a park is probably one of the last things you ever think about and maybe want to think about, but it is a big part of what makes them work in the first place.
It's huge!
If you've ever played some of the more recent roller coaster management sims like Planet Coaster 2 or Parkitect, you know that they touch on some of these aspects a little bit, but obviously it leaves a lot on the table to make things more approachable for the average gamer. There are a ton of moving parts to consider when looking at an amusement park's inner logistics. This includes things related to how you're going to power your park and how water will be delivered around the property. And what about your staff? When it comes to powering an amusement park, you have to consider quite a bit. There's the lights around the park, all of the air conditioning units, the rides themselves, all of the powered kitchenware and tools in the maintenance bays, misting fans and/or heaters dotted around your park, all of your computer systems, servers, and security infrastructure. There's a ton of things that need power.
That's
too much, man!
According to one article I found about a 270-acre solar farm that was built for Walt Disney World, about 50 megawatts of power is produced each day by this farm. Disney stated that this solar farm can power about 2 of their amusement parks. So right there, we know that an amusement park in the Disney chain consumes around 25 to 30 megawatts of power each day. To put that into perspective, the average home in the US uses around 30 kilowatt hours per day of electricity, or 0.03 megawatt hours. Breaking it down a little further, one microwave being used about 15 minutes a day uses about 6.1 kilowatt hours per day, or about 0.0061 megawatt hours per day. Bringing this all together, this means that on average, a Disney park uses about as much electricity as roughly 1,000 homes or 4,918 microwaves. All that being said, oftentimes, larger scale amusement parks will have their very own substation to handle power delivery. If you're like most parks, it'll be placed nearby off-site, but if you're Disneyland, you'll build it underground like most of your utility lines. Certain parks with large-scale launching roller coasters will often have larger capacitors near them in order to supply them with the massive power demand that they could put on your grid. Without these capacitors, you could cause serious problems for the rest of the park whenever this specific coaster launches. Fortunately, like I mentioned before, these electrical lines are often hidden underground, probably in somewhat close proximity to the plumbing lines. You wouldn't want large electrical poles crowding your park's skyline, right? Speaking of plumbing, this is where water usage comes into play. Did you know that the average amusement park uses anywhere from 81,000 to 160,000 gallons of water per day?
Really?
Fortunately, most amusement parks have adopted the reclaim, refilter, and reuse moniker. This means that although it takes tons of water to operate one of these amusement parks, only about 3% of it is actually consumed. This means that for all the water rides, sinks, hoses, fountains, and more, most of this water enters the system and most likely leaves the system, and never actually gets fully used. This is an area of theme park design that had me the most worried, but fortunately it is a lot better news than I initially feared. However, this means that during your planning and building phase, you need to be sure that the local plumbing and your own park's plumbing can handle such high volumes of water passing through it each day. That most likely takes a ton of work to keep up, and a good amount of maintenance each year to ensure it's running in tip-top shape. Picking up another video game, we'll have a look at Parkitect, which brings up some of the details of backstage areas. In this game, most of your infrastructure is built around your shops and stalls. You have staff called haulers who take boxes from your shipping areas and deliver the supplies to the shops. In a real park, things are somewhat similar, but there will likely be one large warehouse or a small number of warehouses around the property that are meant for storage. For your food storage, each shop or stall will be built with on-site freezers or refrigerators to store enough food for the day. This doesn't always work out, so you might have to send somebody to go to the main warehouse to get extra supplies when needed, but most of this is handled completely out of the way of park guests. Obviously, when you're at a park, you wouldn't want to be interrupted by entire coaster cars being relocated to warehouses on the opposite side of the property. Not only would this be immersion breaking, it would be incredibly dangerous. If you're a park like Disneyland, you'd have a labyrinth of underground tunnels allowing for staff to move around the park during their time off the clock. But for most parks, this isn't the case. Ultimately, you need to have things like break rooms, staff restrooms, staff supplies, and other things. Really, this includes everything that regular park guests aren't supposed to interact with. This also includes things like maintenance bays for your roller coasters and storage for other things. Say you need to get a large shipment of parts since one of your roller coasters got old and needs entire sections of track to be replaced. You have to store those somewhere, right? Many parks will have a parts warehouse where they store all sorts of things for the rides, including entire ride vehicles sometimes. Food, restrooms, park benches, lighting, and more. That's what your park's facilities should include. When looking at a park like Disneyland, they have at least 25 major restroom facilities dotted around the park. Ideally, you want to make sure that the distance between these restrooms is fairly short, meaning that people can find one pretty easily, no matter where they are in a park. After taking a look at a park like Kings Island, their restrooms are roughly 660 feet apart. This means it would most likely take roughly 2 to 3 minutes to walk to a restroom, no matter where you are in the park. It's difficult to say exactly how many things like park benches you'll need, so this can be based entirely on how many guests you might be expecting to visit your park each day. It is incredibly important to have enough seating around your restaurants. According to some studies, it takes around 20 minutes for the average American family to eat lunch. So consider how many people in your restaurant can serve per hour and factor this into the eating areas you build near your restaurants. The other things to consider are places where guests can find ways to escape the heat or the general noise of an amusement park. During the summer, it will obviously get hot, so you want people to have enough places to cool down and spend some time in the shade. You can also partially achieve this with indoor seating in your restaurants. Lighting is a fairly easy one to put into consideration, in that you just don't want there to be any dark spots of the park. It doesn't need to be extremely bright, but provide enough light so that guests don't have trouble navigating around your park when it gets later in the day. Now it's time to pivot again, but this time into a story of success. As I mentioned previously, measuring success is not always down to money. I think the best way to bring light to this is by talking about a park like Enchanted Forest. You see, this park exists on a completely different playing field compared to a lot of the examples that I'm bringing up. It is not a huge amusement park, and it did not have a huge team of people helping to plan and execute it. It was mostly a one-man job for most of the park's construction, and it hasn't grown a ton since it was first built. Sure, things have been updated through the years and kept in tip-top shape the entire time, but by many people's metrics, it might be a struggle to call this park a success if it weren't for one small thing. You see, when Roger Tofty, builder of Enchanted Forest, decided to set out and build his very own amusement park, he didn't do it for money. Early into moving to Salem, Oregon, he quickly realized that there wasn't much for he and his family to do together in the immediate area. He quickly surmised that this was the case for a lot of families in the area, and he wanted to change that. So in 1964, he set out to use his own two hands to build this amusement park to make that special family time a reality for everyone nearby. Obviously, this was a different time, but he put nearly every bit of his time, energy, and finances into this project to make it happen, all the while being called a fool by friends and sometimes even family for thinking this could work. So by that measure, bringing families together and giving them a place to spend time together, has he been successful? Absolutely. It is certainly not the biggest, baddest, or most advanced park, but it also never set out to be. Despite facing challenges over the years and nearly closing on at least one occasion, Enchanted Forest still stands as a beacon of the idea of perseverance. Also, shameless plug if you're interested in hearing the story of this park. I highly recommend you check out the documentary I had the wonderful opportunity to make, where I personally had the privilege to hear the story from Roger Tofty himself and his family. Sadly, Roger Tofty passed away on February 13th, 2026, but in his wake, he leaves a lasting legacy and has paved the way for future generations of his own family to continue this story of success. Alright, so your amusement park is built. For our final section, you have to consider what it takes to keep the park running. For those of you who have spent hours playing these theme park sims I mentioned earlier, hopefully this is the part you might be most familiar with. There's a decent amount of things to consider here, such as staff, maintenance, and maintaining guest satisfaction. Sorry, Roller Coaster Tycoon aficionados, Hiring hundreds of entertainers really won't force all of your guests to inject happy gas whenever they're near a fuzzy character. Depending on what size of park you have in your hands, you'll have a different amount of staff you'll need to hire.
You'll have to get jobs. You know, employment.
To run things in the background, considering a park like Silverwood, they employ roughly 120 full-time workers, and this goes up to around 1,600 seasonal workers during their actual operating season. Moving on to a park like Hershey Park, they have roughly 1,700 full-time employees and over 7,000 seasonal workers. Quite the large difference. Most of your seasonal staff is likely going to be late high school to college age, so hopefully you're located near a large enough population center. If you're not, then most likely you'll have to do what parks like Hershey Park do, where they hire staff from abroad. This allows them to fill in gaps in their workforce they otherwise might have, but it can provide certain other challenges, like having adequate on-site dorms for the seasonal staff. You also have to consider hiring people for marketing, cybersecurity, physical security, financial advisors, and analysts. Maybe even a legal department if you're big enough. Keeping your park well maintained is a duty shared between your full-time staff and your seasonal staff. You have your seasonal custodians who do things such as keeping trash bins from getting too full, to the full-time maintenance workers who ensure that all of your coasters are running properly. A large part of the maintenance work needed to run a park is put into keeping things clean. Some parks have a near daily power washing of the walkways, keeping debris and trash from staining them. Other parks might take time to wash the flat rides and roller coasters themselves, giving the roller coaster trains a car wash of sorts. If you have any vegetation around the park, like flowers or other plants, those need to be watered and/or trimmed to prevent people from hitting them when riding your roller coasters. During the off-season, your maintenance team will most likely spend the time fully deconstructing some roller coaster trains and rebuilding them, doing non-destructive testing on them to ensure that everything is holding up well. They might also do more in-depth track inspection work during this time to ensure that the structural integrity of everything is good. Fortunately for this aspect of your park, much of it has already been written down in a guideline called the ASTM Standards, or American Society for Testing and Materials. This guidebook is pretty much your Bible, and you need to stick to it well.
I can't read.
Finally, the biggest and most important part of constructing an amusement park is the amusement part of it. You want to keep your visitors happy. This is where just about everything culminates together. If your rides, restrooms, and other park facilities are well maintained, your guests will be happy. If there are plenty of staff nearby to assist lost park guests to where they need to go, or at least other resources to make this possible, like landmarks and physical park maps, your guests will be happy. If your park has enough capacity to keep everyone fed, entertained, and move around, your guests will be happy. If your park is interesting enough to get people to want to visit it in the first place, your guests will be happy. It genuinely is subjective into what it takes to keep your guests happy, but these are some of the key things to pay attention to when planning it all out. You really don't want to have too few food stalls and restaurants, leading to long lines and not everyone being able to eat at lunchtime. Are your pathways wide enough so crowds can move smoothly? Are there enough restrooms nearby so guests don't have to walk too far to find one? Do these restrooms have enough toilet paper? I could go on and on with this section, as the list of things that you need to consider when it comes to keeping people happy is immense. I know it feels weird to talk about this towards the end of the video, but arguably the most important phase in building an amusement park is the planning phase. It's clear that everything we've talked about so far will help put into perspective many of the different things that you'll need to consider when building this amusement park, but it can't go without stating how necessary it is to go into this having a plan. In your plan, you'll want to have ride names, the type of rides, the type of audience you're trying to attract, and the layout of your park. This last one can be a very important thing to consider. Is your park going to be one giant loop or a sprawling mess of interconnected pathways? You really should consider this aspect heavily since you want your park to be easily navigable. So, you think you got all that? Do you feel up to the challenge to do it? No? Yeah, let's face it. The reality of starting an amusement park from scratch is a tough one. There's so many things to consider, especially if you want to create a medium or large scale park. It obviously provides a major benefit to start at a smaller scale, but even then, the list of things you need to consider seems endless. It even tends to overwhelm me a bit when playing Planet Coaster 2 and trying to go for a realistic approach. Look at this half-finished park I have. I've tried to focus on all the nitty-gritty details, but my ADHD self can't seemingly do it all on my own. That is often why the entire construction of an amusement park is so far removed from being a one-man job, which then further creates more logistical challenges as you try to weigh all of the facets of leading potentially tens of thousands of people through a project that is your own vision. This isn't even talking about any of the money part of it either. Success in this industry isn't impossible, however. If you have a vision and make every effort to push towards a goal, you can make it happen. Even if you have to change your own metric for success, that could make it all the better when you are truly able to achieve what you set out to do. Okay, whoa. This is a huge video, and I know that there was a lot, and it probably was kind of boring at times. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please just do me a huge favor. Make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and use the hype button too, because I want this to try to get out there to as many people as I can. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like and comment below, and hit that bell icon. Special thanks to our Patreon supporter, Future Collective. $1 a month helps me bring even more content to you guys, and I even have some exclusive content coming, so check it out. Check the description below to find links to the rest of our pages. Thanks for watching the video, and ride on, Coaster Maniacs!